It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Generational winter storm set to hit the U.S. That's from CBC Canada. From AP News, forecasters warn of a, quote, potentially catastrophic storm from Texas to the Carolinas. Yes, that's so-called Winter Storm Fern. The names make it more theatrical. From the report, forecasters on Tuesday warned that the ice could weigh down trees and power lines, triggering widespread outages. That's when the chemical ice-nucleated moisture hits the surface before it sets up. That's the transition zone from the far above freezing moisture to the eventual chemical frozen material that falls from the skies in various shapes and sizes now. The report then states the National Weather Service warned of great swaths of heavy snow, sleet, and treacherous freezing rain. Yes, exactly. The so-called experts can't say with any certainty how it will all develop, a primary pitfall of engineering winter weather with chemical ice nucleation operations. AP News continues with this. The exact timing of the approaching storm and where it is headed remained uncertain on Tuesday. Forecasters say it can be challenging to predict precisely which areas could see rain and which ones could be punished with ice. Stop there. Interesting choice of words, isn't it? From the scheduled weather script readers, quote, which ones could be punished with ice, end quote. The climate engineering contaminated chemical kind of ice, the extremely cold to the touch kind, the extremely slippery surfactant soaked kind. Last excerpt from AP News report. A major winter storm with very impactful weather with all the moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. Stop. Another obvious red flag. A, quote, major winter storm with all the moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, the record warm Gulf of Mexico, because that's where winter storms come from, right? Right. Moving on. More super sensationalized headlines from the Matrix media minions, aka climate engineering cover-up cast of honorless clowns. From the Washington Post, a whopper storm could soon engulf a 2,000-mile stretch with snow and ice. From the Post report, we're about to witness a truly legendary winter storm setup in the southern U.S. Stop. Again, the controllers and the climate engineers are seeking sensationalized headlines exactly like that one from the Post. And Matrix media, so-called weather experts, all parrot their scripted talking points in the effort to further fuel the sensationalization. Look here, don't look there. Translation, pay no attention to the rest of the world that's spiraling into total meltdown. Well, the chemical cooldowns continue in the U.S., most specifically and most often in the eastern half of the U.S., where most Americans live. Maximum impact for the climate engineers. More Matrix Media Look Here, Don't Look There headlines in a moment. First, a final wrap-up on the Florida snow. Welcome to the New World winters. Gulf Coast snows while it rains in the Arctic for the second year in a row. The flash freeze freak snowstorms are decimating what is yet left of flora and fauna. The nanoparticle and chemical elements used in the relentless climate engineering operations are also contaminating every single breath we take. How long can you hold your breath? From the Tampa Bay News, snow in the Florida Panhandle for a second year in a row. And for the record, on almost exactly the same day. The annual Engineered Florida Chemical Snow event has now come and gone. For warmer weather, Alaska would have been a much better vacation option. With that in mind, from MSN, this, Florida residents woke up to temperatures colder than Alaska. Yes, exactly like last January's freak flash blizzard in New Orleans, Florida, and the Gulf Coast. So while there was warmer temperatures and rain in the Arctic, including Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, and Siberia, the completely engineered record chemical snowstorm took place in New Orleans, fueled by a moisture flow straight from the record warm Gulf of Mexico, exactly like the chemical ice nucleated snow that just happened in Florida again. But the engineered winter weather warfare mayhem doesn't stop there. No, the weather terrorists are beyond desperate to manufacture as much chemical cold as they can while they can. They're actually aware that they are rapidly losing ground to the wider horizon tidal wave that is looming large over our collective heads. More in the latest round of winter weather warfare from Wired.com. What we know about the winter storm about to hit the U.S. and what we don't. The report then states a huge portion of the United States is going to be hit with snow or freezing rain this weekend. Exactly where, what, and how much remains uncertain. Stop. Yes, again, it's all so uncertain, as should be expected when the scheduled weather script is constantly changing in the attempt to outrun the unfolding and accelerating abrupt climate collapse that's happening around the world. Let's add this from the New York Times. U.S. winter storm forecast to bring menacing mix of snow, ice, and cold. Stop again. They all have their talking points, don't they? And the core causal factor behind the, quote, menacing mix of ice and cold, climate engineering, is, of course, completely omitted from the report. What a surprise. Let's add this tidbit from Fox News Radar, specifically Fox 9 Minneapolis and Fox Weather, has shown a, quote, phenomenon known as airplane effect snow, or, quote, accidental cloud seeding. They continue and state this, where aircraft descending through cold, supersaturated air triggers the formation of snow flurries. Oh, okay, so that's all it is. Accidental climate engineering, with geoengineering jet aircraft accidentally spraying nanoparticles that accidentally happen to be patented endothermic reacting chemical ice nucleating elements. Accidentally. Nothing to see here. Move along. Welcome to the orbiting asylum. So if anyone that pretends to be fighting climate engineering while simultaneously denying it claims it's all just jet exhaust, that is somehow magically, chemically nucleating the record warm atmospheric moisture from the record warm Gulf of Mexico, you'll know you're dealing with someone that is either clueless, a con artist, or paid disinformation. Let's keep going. What's another primary factor in this equation? Frequency transmission manipulation of atmospheric layers, and thus atmospheric pressure zones, upper level wind currents, and atmospheric flows of moisture. Think HAARP, the ionosphere heater weapon of mass destruction facility in Glaucona, Alaska. HAARP is one of perhaps 100 or more such facilities around the globe. They vary in design, size, and capability, but there are many. And there are the NexRad networks as well, bombarding the atmosphere with overlapping frequencies that are 10 times stronger or more than the communications frequencies. Let's hope that people fighting the communications frequencies also focus on the much more powerful climate engineering frequencies. But with those in mind, this headline from livescience.com, Earth hit by biggest solar radiation storm in 23 years, triggering northern lights as far as Southern California. The report states Earth's magnetic field was struck by a severe solar storm. That's Monday, January 19th, triggering vibrant auroras in the U.S. and large parts of Europe. The storm broke a record that has stood for more than 2 decades. Let's stop there. Wow. What an amazing coincidence. Again, just in time to kick off the scheduled so-called polar vortex. For the record, last year, immediately prior to the major aurora borealis event, the HAARP facility issued a warning to the FAA for any and all flights to stay out of their airspace during the exact window of time that the major aurora borealis event occurred. And just a coincidence, I'm sure. Final point to ponder. Does available science make clear that ionosphere heater installations like HAARP can, in fact, trigger and feed aurora borealis events? Short answer, yes. Let's add this from Fox News. Severe geomagnetic storm dazzles night sky with northern lights in many states across the U.S. The report of severe geomagnetic storm watch remains in effect as millions had the rare chance to spot the northern lights. One more from AP News. Meteorologists blame a stretched polar vortex, moisture, and a lack of sea ice for dangerous winter blast. The report says warm Arctic waters and cold continental land are combining to stretch the dreaded polar vortex in a way that will send much of the United States a devastating dose of winter weather. Report then states meteorologists said the eastern two-thirds of the nation is threatened with a winter storm that could rival the damage of a major hurricane. Let's stop there. Yes, the eastern two-thirds of the nation, the most populated portion, maximum impact and public perception payoff for the weather terrorists. More from AP News. The polar vortex is a patch of bitterly cold air that often stays pinned up in northern Canada and Alaska, is being elongated by a wave in the upper atmosphere that goes back to a relatively ice-free part of the Arctic and Siberia. And for the record, yes, Russia is also neck deep in the climate engineering atrocities. Kamchatka is their latest victim. AP News then states, as the bone-chilling temperatures sweep through the U.S., they'll meet with moisture from off of California and the Gulf of Mexico to set up crippling ice and snow in many areas. Here's the final excerpt from that report. The origins of the system begin in the Arctic, where relatively warm temperatures add energy to the polar vortex. Let's stop there. Yes, because that makes perfect sense, right? Winter storms that begin in the Arctic, where temperatures are far above normal, and are then fed with moisture from the record-warm Gulf of Mexico, and presto, chemical winter weather. And for those that roll their eyes and walk away and think none of this is possible, couldn't happen, please search Chinese scientist engineer snowstorm. As I've cited so many times, all major media covered China's constant engineering of snowstorms over major urban areas. Popular Science, MSNBC, CNN, The Guardian, The Independent, BBC, all of them covered this. But if you bring it up here in the U.S., suddenly you're accused of being a tinfoil hat wearing nutcase, because that's what the power structure have programmed populations to do. Knee-jerk reaction, no rational thought, no investigation, just marginalize anybody who dares to deliver an unpleasant truth. But that's changing, thankfully. Let's keep going. More from Fox Weather. Parts of lower 48 colder than Alaska this week as polar vortex set to grip nation with weeks of Arctic air. At least that's what's on the schedule. We'll see if they can pull it off. The report states part of the polar vortex, which contains some of the coldest air on the planet and is usually above the North Pole, shifted south over much of the central and eastern U.S. and will usher in waves of sub-freezing temperatures for much of the country, at least through the beginning of February. Let's stop there. Key phrase. Quote, waves of sub-freezing temperatures, the shallow surface layer of chemical cold kind, as the climate engineers spray each passing band of atmospheric moisture. Fox Weather then states, quote, dangerous, life-threatening cold has spread over much of the northern plains, Midwest, and parts of the Northeast, with another surge of Arctic air expected to drop wind chill temperatures close to 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit later this week, leaving some places in the lower 48 colder than Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, parts of Siberia. What's wrong with this picture? And many of the regions that are about to be hit with the freak flash freeze record cold have been bouncing back and forth to record warmth, record winter warmth. Welcome to winter weather warfare. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, the end of the world as we know it broadcast, brought to you by geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate intervention operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote for those that truly want to help move this fight forward, to sound the alarm. Very effective climate engineering awareness-raising materials. They're available on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Full color, extremely high-quality printed materials, shocking images, and we pass these on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. The mission is the only thing we care about. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts, now with restock sizes, new colors. Those are great conversation starters. Please help us to start spot fires of awareness while it can still make a difference. Moving on, more from Fox Weather. Historic winter storm expected to affect over 40 states in the U.S. And many of these areas to receive some sort of frozen material. It's a light dusting because the chemical ice nucleation operations, the endothermic reacting elements, tend to dry up much or most of the moisture in that process. It's the laws of physics. The weather makers create freak flash surface cool downs, but all of it comes at the cost of a more damaged planet and an even worsened overall planetary meltdown. Let's add this, another from Fox News, historic winter storm, 235 million in path of dangerous snow and ice. One more from Fox, sprawling winter storm expected to paralyze travel for days. a continuing chemical freeze, maximum impact to public perception. Forgive me for beating this horse anymore, but this is obviously a very coordinated effort with Matrix Media, so I want to keep covering headlines on this major engineered event, which they will have difficulty pulling off anymore in the future. Why? Because with each passing day, we are further into the curve of a runaway greenhouse effect. Don't believe it? You will. Wait and see. Here's the headline. From AccuWeather, major snow ice storm to affect more than 150 million people, different amounts listed with different sources. In southern and eastern U.S., they say a massive winter storm is set to spread heavy snow and ice across more than 24 states. Other sources say 40, threatening travel, power outages, dangerous cold from the South Plains and Northeast this weekend. How many people think, well, it must be normal because it was predicted, right? Does that make it normal? Because the so-called weather experts, the power structure paid kind, are reading a script that predicted it? That doesn't make anything normal. AccuWeather continues, the amount and extent of snow and ice could cut power and disrupt travel for days, increasing the risk to lives and property. They say potentially hundreds of thousands of people may go without electricity and heat for days. AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist John Porter said. Should John get a link to the dimming? And maybe the rest of the AccuWeather staff? And perhaps ask to explain why they don't address this elephant in the equation? You decide. AccuWeather then says so much snow and sleet may fall that roads could become clogged in areas ill-equipped to handle even light coatings of snow, especially the surfactant-soaked kind, right? The super slippery kind. They say let alone several inches from the southern plains to the Mississippi Valley, schools and child care centers may be closed for days. In areas where thick glaze of ice forms, scores of trees and power lines may come down. Removing ice from streets, highways, parking lots, and sidewalks may be difficult or impossible, especially where ice melting supplies are limited. Utility crews could be overwhelmed by the scope of the storm. How is this not winter weather warfare? And there's always an ice storm transition zone between the flows of far above freezing moisture and the eventual, quote, snow event where various sizes and shapes of strange-looking frozen materials come down from the sky, nothing like historically naturally nucleated snow. And I assure you it is toxic and super cold to the touch. And not much runoff from some of this material. Why? Because it's chemically nucleated and it sublimates, which means much of it converts from a solid to a gas, bypassing the liquid phase. Dry ice being, of course, an extreme example of sublimation. AccuWeather continues, some locations on the colder side of the storm could receive 6 to 12 inches of snow or more. Let's stop there. Translation, the quote, colder side of the winter storm, as opposed to the warm side of the so-called winter storm, which is now the new norm. On that note, AccuWeather then states, on the southern edge of the storm near the Gulf Coast and southern Atlantic coast, thunderstorms may rumble. Let's stop there again. Yes, right, because thunderstorms are common on the warm side of the new and improved winter storms. From the UK Daily Mail, this, plan for days without power. This is not good. Meteorologists warning as storm to blast America. There's another one of those clues, quote, storm to blast America. Question, are the controllers and the climate engineers sending us a message with that kind of statement? You decide. Let's add this from yahoo.com. Parts of Michigan at risk for exploding trees because of severely cold weather. The report says trees split apart in extreme cold and cause a sound similar to a gunshot. Let's stop there. How much do they expect us to believe is normal? And no, that's not normal. That only happens when you flash freeze regions at such blinding speed, the cores of the trees do not have time to cool down. There's a massive temperature gradient and it causes this kind of scenario. There's nothing normal about that. There's nothing normal about baseball and softball size hail now coming down in so many storms and decimating so many towns, cities, vehicles. There's nothing normal about snow beginning to fall at temperatures far above freezing. It eventually cools down because of the chemical nucleation process. But there's nothing normal about skies that look like something from a Vin Diesel sci-fi movie plastered with climate engineering sprayed filth. There's nothing natural about anything anymore. And people go on about their life as if it's going to continue magically forever into the future. Good luck with that. And all the geopolitical total insanity happening around the world is a direct result of unfolding and accelerating global ecological collapse. As I've stated for so many years, 2 decades in total, that when biosphere collapse beat the power structure to the intersection, they would become incredibly desperate and play ever bigger cards, and that is happening right now. More weather warfare from the Weather Channel. Multiple injuries reported in 100 vehicle pileup on I-196 in Michigan. More than 100 vehicles were involved in a series of crashes and slide-offs that shut down part of the interstate. Here's a question. Could this be connected to the now super slick surfactant-soaked snow? And for those that don't know what surfactants are, that's what makes soap slippery. Part of the climate-engineering mix, in fact. Why? To keep the nanoparticles from coagulating together and increasing their descent time. Because the climate engineers don't care about the consequences of anything they do. Do the controllers care about all the nuclear bombs they detonated, about Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl, the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere that they thought could collapse the entire atmosphere? They did it anyway, didn't they? They're building nuclear power plants everywhere, 60 more under construction, 442 online right now, all of which will go into meltdown when collapse comes because it takes about 3 decades to cold shut down those plants. They're building AI centers everywhere where there's no water. Tell me where there's sanity in this equation. It's a full throttle acceleration straight into a concrete wall of total collapse. Let's keep going. Remember a moment ago, or many times on many broadcasts or many years, how many times have I made mention of the fact that the chemical nucleating elements dry up much or most of the moisture? With that in mind, from the UK Independent, 2/3 of the US is facing drought in the middle of winter. Here's why scientists are worried. They say drought conditions threaten water supplies and could mean fire risks. God, I hate to belate this, but how many times do the so-called scientists say could, may, might mean this or that? If you jump off a 100-story building, you could, may, might risk injury when you land face first on the sidewalk. We live in a total insanity. The climate science community has betrayed the human race and the entire web of life because they can't find the spine to tell the truth. Straight out, they can't do it. This report says the conditions touch every state except for the usually drought-prone California, which has had a wet winter. Really? Is it really that good here? It's dry as a bone now where I live because it instantly dried out. Why? Because atmospheric RH, relative humidity, drops through the basement the second the moisture clears out and there's spraying somewhere else in the country, so it flash dries everything. Is the forest coming back here? No, it's dying by the day. The trees are dying faster than ever right now in the no drought California, right? What about the hundreds of inches in my location alone in the last 18, 19 years? We are hundreds of inches short. No reflection of that. It's all smoke and mirrors designed to pacify populations. And what about the orographically enhanced rain? The rain that is many times more because of the topography. So if Redding, California, for example, gets 33 inches of rain, my location should get 70 plus inches, and northeast of me should get almost 140 inches. That's not happening. That is not happening. It hasn't been happening. So they take rain readings from certain urban areas, add it all up, and pretend it's normal when it's anything but normal. There's nothing normal in this equation. There's nothing normal on our world at this point. The shocking behavior of our so-called leaders is a case in point, isn't it? So they say California's all fine, everything good, nothing to see here. Let's add this from the same report. The Colorado snow drought snowpack is the lowest on record for this time of year. Perhaps this new whipped up chemical storm will drop some endothermic reacting ice nucleated frozen material that will generally sublimate, and it won't change a damn thing for the water prospect for the Southwest. From ABC News, California completely drought-free for the first time in 25 years after winter storms. Incredible news for California, the report says. Water supplies entering the new year are great. Not a single square mile of California categorized as dry for the first time in 25 years, according to the latest U.S. drought monitor. So how come I am having to water my trees on the east side of Lake Shasta? It used to be a lush forested area. I have to water in January in my drought-free state, right? Because the 10-inch flash flood that came about a month ago doesn't change drought. All that water runs off, carrying most of the soil with it down into the lake basin, which diminishes the lake's capacity. From every conceivable direction, the climate engineers are decimating what little is left of the planet's life support systems. From extremetemps.com, from record warmth to record cold in a few days. Incredible turnaround in northern China. Oh, the Chinese are doing it too, right? Of course they are. Of course they are. More than enough insanity to go around in every single government all over the world. And we know they're colluding and cooperating on the climate engineering issue because we have U.S. Senate documents to prove it. Search geoengineeringwatch.org, massive Senate document, 800 pages long, from 1978, extremely damning, important sections highlighted in yellow. And in that document, it makes clear there will be, quote, intergovernmental cooperation between otherwise adversarial nations on the climate engineering issue because of the cross-border ramifications. What a surprise. Just like with CV19. Behind the curtain, the mafia control centers are working together until the resources start to run out and the planet's life support systems start to implode, and then everything starts to blow apart. And we're in that phase now. Let's add this. Another from extremetemps.com, 50 degrees, they're talking about 50 degrees Celsius, which is 122 Fahrenheit in Western Australia. Monthly records smashed. This is just the beginning of one of the harshest coastal heat waves ever seen worldwide. But wait, it's so cold, cold, cold in the U.S. Record cold, right? So it must be cold all over the world. Not so much. Eastern half of the U.S. lower 48, less than 1% of the planet's surface area. That is hardly a snapshot of the world. From Bloomberg, this, how the U.S. is abandoning climate action under Trump. Let's stop there. For the record, no. Climate action under the Trump administration isn't being abandoned. In fact, it's being supercharged, and it's called climate engineering, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare. With that in mind, what are the tens of millions of tons of geoengineering jet dispersed nanoparticles doing to our health? A plethora of toxic elements that we all inhale with every single breath we take. The contamination is ubiquitous. There is no place to hide. This is an ongoing, worsening reporting from media that can no longer hide this catastrophic threat. From the UK Independent, scientists reveal the impact of air pollution on the human body. They say breathing in air pollution like ozone and PM2.5, they don't even mention the nanoparticles, which is a mountain of even more toxic elements. But even without that, they say this harms nearly every major system in the human body. It is particularly hard on the cardiovascular, respiratory, and neurological systems. Even short-term exposure to either PM2.5 or ozone, they're talking about surface ozone, not atmospheric ozone, can create hospitalizations or heart attacks and strokes. And they're not even considering the nanoparticle pollution again, which is the worst of all. Also from the Independent, quote, prolonged air pollution linked to increased incurable muscle wasting disease. That doesn't sound good, does it? Try not to breathe. From airqualitynews.com, air pollution, a major financial risk for companies and investors. Who cares about human health? The investors could lose some money. We can't have that. A new report released, that's January 21st, warns air pollution has evolved from a public health emergency into a severe and systemic financial risk, threatening trillions of dollars in economic value and exposing companies and investors to escalating regulatory, legal, and operational pressures. Guess what? Environment fails, no more civilization, no more humans, no more web of life, game over. From phys.org, microplastics found in rural woodland at higher levels than in city centers. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we've been told so many times that this type of pollution is just because of all the vehicles running around within city streets. No. There's a much bigger source of nanoparticle pollution. It's coming from the sky. Climate engineering is the core causal factor. This report says air polluting microplastics have been found in rural environments in greater quantities than in urban locations. Researchers say scientists led by the University of Leeds detected up to 500 microscopic particles of polymers per square meter in an area of woodland during the 3-month study, twice as much as samples from the city. Imagine that. They believe trees and other vegetation capture airborne microplastic particles from the atmosphere and deposit them, highlighting the impact that different landscape and weather conditions have on the spread of the particles. How about the food we eat? How about the farms? And of course, we have the toxic urban sludge spread on the farms as well. It's quite a recipe, isn't it? A recipe for near-term demise of everything. The report then says that these unexpected results challenge the assumption that microplastic pollution is mainly an urban problem. And no, that narrative was always a lie, because these particles are showing up everywhere, from the North Pole to the South Pole to the top of Mount Everest, along with PFAS forever chemicals And they're not even looking for many of the other elements, aluminum, barium, strontium. We are absolutely living in a toxic fishbowl. Everything is dying, from insects to birds to wildlife, fisheries, plankton. How long does any rational, sane, even halfway awake human being believe we are going to continue on this course before it's game over? How long? There are so many breaking bad news headlines that every week I can't get to them all. And I'm never going to get to all of them that I wanted to cover this week, so I'm going to try to hit just the headlines, not going into much depth. You can follow up on your own. I want to cover as much as I can while I can. Let's start with this from thesun.com. Russia faces snow apocalypse after deadly record snowfall buries cities. Yes, Russia neck deep in the same chemical winter weather insanity as the U.S., as China. Those are the main players, other countries involved actively or passively as well. From the Weather Network, Canada outheats Florida. Went over that some earlier. Yeah, does that make sense? Nice and warm up north. If you want to get some snow, you got to go down to Florida, right? Or maybe New Orleans. Year's not over yet. Could happen there again, too. From ScienceDaily.com, the world's mountains are warming faster than anyone expected. I knew. Don't tell me they didn't know. Week after week, month after month, year after year, I have stated it's far worse than anything we're being told from so-called academia. The data dictated that conclusion. I wasn't looking at a crystal ball. How come the world's, quote, climate scientists can't tell the truth, and they're only beginning to tell the truth now because they can no longer hide it? We have permafrost melting in mountains around the world, and they are literally collapsing like the Alps. Don't believe me, please look it up. So now if you want to get cold weather, again, you got to go down to the Gulf Coast, and you'll find it there, at least for a few days, until the record warmth comes back. Let's keep going. How about this from phys.org and other sources? Amplifying feedbacks could drive Greenland's ice sheet to near complete disappearance. Could, may, might, right? No. It's now just a matter of time. And for those that don't know what feedback loops are, the ice itself, the loss of ice, is a feedback loop. So when you lose the reflective ice that reflects about 90% of the sun's incoming thermal energy, this is sea ice, land ice. Now you have dark land or dark oceans absorbing 90% of that incoming thermal energy. So the more ice that melts, the more ice will melt because everything's getting warmer. And that's happening at blinding speed. And for those who say, hey, no big deal, planet's been warmer in the past, the planet has never warmed at this pace based on all available paleo data. The planet's warming faster, at a faster rate than it likely has based on paleo data, again, for 485 million years. It's the rate of change that's the problem. Nothing can adapt. And now we don't have a functional ozone layer. We have a completely contaminated planet. And we have enough nuclear bombs and nuclear power plants to turn the planet into Venus about 100 times over. And that's not even counting all the methane deposits that are thawing and blowing out and releasing. Add another 100 Venus syndromes to this equation. Doesn't look good. And we have people focused on political circus every day and completely out of control power structures that are doing their best to debilitate and lock down societies as fast as they possibly can before we hit the wall at full velocity. Because if enough of the population is still fully functional, when they finally wake up to what's been done to them without their knowledge or consent, and we hit the proverbial pitchforks and torches moment, that's a bad day for those in power. And they know it. Next report from lbc.co.uk, speed of coastal erosion described as, quote, frightening as more homes demolished. It's happening on the UK coast, on the US coast. You have South Sea Islands that are going under, palm trees in the surf. Think nothing's changing? Think again. Do some research. From MSN, runaway climate shocks arriving early could slam the world with trillions in losses. Could, may, might. Can't measure this kind of earth change in money. We're talking about the survival of life on Earth. All the printed money in the world, all the shiny coins, won't matter if the human race remains on the current course. Next from the UK Guardian, the world is facing irreversible water bankruptcy. Billions of people are at risk. Remember, it has to rain more on a rapidly warming planet, and we are most definitely on a rapidly warming planet. 7% more moisture, For every degree C of warming, we are likely past 3.5 C. Now that's 6+ degrees Fahrenheit. That's not being reported. It's being completely denied by the so-called climate science community. That means we should have much more rain overall, and we don't. Why don't we? Because climate engineering has completely disrupted and derailed the hydrological cycle, and it is radically decimating the planet's cloud-making capabilities. We are not seeing cumulus clouds in Northern California where I live, and I know that's the case in many other regions around the world. We see filthy aerosol clouds in our sky, and that's it. And that is a very, very dire harbinger. Next headline from Yahoo News. 40 million Americans may run out of water, and no one has a plan. There's no could, there's no may, there's no might. They're talking about the U.S. Southwest. Colorado River Supplies report says water to 40 million people, and now it's running out. 7 states that depend on it are fighting over what remains. And let's not forget Mexico. They don't even get any water anymore. And I spent much of my childhood at the Colorado River Delta in Baja California, and it was absolutely paradise, life everywhere. So many waterfowl that the air echoed with their calls. Now, nothing. Just a dead zone. How are things going at the bottom of the world? Not so well. From the UK Guardian, the fate of the planet's coastlines depends on how fast Antarctica's ice sheets melt. We don't know what's coming. Oh, yes, they do. They know exactly what's coming. That's why they're digging into bunkers, building bunkers below ballrooms while they're building more bombs. A literal circus of insanity. From this report, quote, some regions of the continent Antarctica have enough ice to push up sea levels by 15 meters. But researchers don't yet fully understand the consequences. Yes, they do. They absolutely understand. They just won't tell the truth. They say it changes the map and we can't put the genie back in the bottle. That part's true. From the UK Guardian, scientists warn of regime shift as seaweed blooms expand worldwide. They're talking about sargassum. It's building up on beaches everywhere. This is the wonderful hydrogen sulfide emitting sargassum, again, a sign of unfolding Canfield Ocean. What's that mean? It means a lifeless, stratified, superheated, dead zone in the oceans. Oceans die, we die. Plankton down 90% of the Atlantic already. Other oceans not far behind. Plankton, largest oxygen source in the world, base of the food chain, and the majority don't seem to care because they can still buy a Big Mac. From the Las Vegas Review-Journal, more on the Southwest water woes. Lake Mead's projected record low gets even lower. This is going to be bad by the end of 2026. Wait and see. From NHK World, Japan Media, extreme snowfall, an effect of global warming. Part of this is true because you have regions in Antarctica where there's been no recorded precipitation for hundreds of years. It's simply too cold, and now it's warmer. And snow is falling in those regions. But when we have the engineered mayhem, the winter weather warfare, like what's taking place in the U.S., that has nothing to do with global warming and everything to do with climate engineering. It's a complex equation. Get partial truths from the climate science community, and then they omit the elephant in the equation, geoengineering. Moving on from Munich.com, severe hailstorms increasing most rapidly in Europe. From that report, the frequency of severe hailstorms is increasing more rapidly in Europe than anywhere else in the world, the baseball and softball kind. From Goulburn Post in the land down under, same story. Great balls of ice, exclamation point. Hailstorm smashes windows and properties. An intense hailstorm that struck the Goulburn district left a trail of destruction, chemical ice nucleation. Please search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn so much more. And in the same regions where these flash cool downs with baseball and softball size hail are occurring, we have intense incinerations. From insurance.com, Australian Insurance Association declares bushfire catastrophe. That's forest fire. That's what they call them there, bushfires. Australia burning up or being pounded with baseball and softball size hail. From the UK Guardian, Chilean president declares state of catastrophe as wildfire kills at least 18. And for the record, if you look at the photographs of where some of these fires are being blowtorched through towns, the pictures look very eerily similar to Lahaina and the Palisades fires aftermath. Same processes being carried out. Again, climate engineering is inseparable from the out-of-control incinerations everywhere. Source of ignition, separate subject. What is setting the template for these fires to burn with such ferocity? That's absolutely climate engineering. If you're willing to learn what most would rather not know, search the Engineering Wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 546, January 24th, 2026. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News brought to you by geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations, known as geoengineering. Global Alert News is aired on a number of AM and FM stations around the country. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast for free. There's no commercials in our broadcast. Very easy for these stations to upload and utilize our weekly updates of unfolding collapse. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on our email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming. This is the best A to Z on this issue, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities. Best way to share, circulate the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate credible data, critically important data, to a much wider audience. About reaching those that still are not looking up, start the conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on our homepage. Our only goal, to give activists what they need to move this fight forward. Our very high-quality, full-color printed materials we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. You can view them on our homepage. We have hoodies, shirts, different colors, great conversation starters. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers, all effective tools to help strike up a conversation, again, on the climate engineering issue. That's the only thing we make available on our site. Materials needed to help in this all-important battle. Reaching a critical mass of awareness on the climate engineering onslaught is the great imperative of our time. If we can expose it, we have a chance of stopping it from the inside out. We must awaken our military brothers and sisters and their families so that they know they are literally participating in their own near-term demise. As always, my deepest gratitude to every single individual that's doing their best to do their part to move this fight forward, given their individual circumstances and situations. It's our collective efforts that can yet make a difference at this late hour. My deepest gratitude to all of you. From MSN, for the first time in 40 years, Panama's deep waters did not rise and the ocean system may be collapsing. This is only one small snapshot of the ocean's circulatory system that's imploding, and that's what regulates temperatures all over the world. The gravity and immediacy of this threat cannot be overstated. This is, again, only one example of that. We have the AMOC current also collapsing, and nothing about this is on almost any mainstream anything. Biosphere collapse completely off the radar. Here's another bad news breaking headline. This is an ongoing story that's worsening by the day. The ramifications are grave. This is from MSN. Antarctica's doomsday glacier is on the verge of collapsing now. Melted global sea levels would suddenly rise, flooding cities, displacing millions of people, and destroying infrastructure. It's not a matter of if, but when. But wait, technology. Yeah, that'll save us, right? Also, ongoing delusion from the so-called academic community. From issuesandinsights.com, blocking the sun, the folly of solar geoengineering. Right? What could possibly go wrong with filling the sky with tens of millions of tons annually of toxic nanoparticle pollution, synergistically toxic, destroying the ozone layer, disrupting the hydrological cycle, completely decimating the planet's cloud-making capabilities? I could go on and on and on. Folly of the human race is what's in question here. About that filth in our skies, what are some of the terms that the Matrix Media climate engineering cover-up actors use to explain it away? Here's some from AccuWeather for different day forecasts. Sun through high clouds, partly sunny, hazy sun, filtered sun. These cowards know exactly what's going on, but they don't have the backbone to tell the truth or stand down, walk away from their job of climate engineering cover-up. And their paychecks and pensions won't mean anything very soon. I would rather die with my honor and my virtue and my morality than a paycheck and a pension. Means nothing to me, nothing. Moving on, how soon till the food shelves empty out? It is definitely coming. Snapshot on that front from Yale Climate Connections, aka Yale University. Small farms fight for survival in a warming Midwest. This is one tiny snapshot of what's taking place around the world. We have crop collapse happening everywhere, fisheries collapse all over the world. The report says, as floods, droughts, and heat waves rise, growers face make or break seasons with an insufficient safety net. It is imploding by the day. So few have a clue. From thenation.com, The Line. This is important, a follow-up story. A Saudi mega project is dead. Covered this before. It's the delusional city of Neom, 100-mile-long horizontal skyscrapers, what it amounted to, that the Saudi megalomaniacs thought they were going to build with their oil money. Total delusion. This is a multi-trillion-dollar dead end already because the delusion of perpetual expansion on a finite planet with finite resources is now coming to a head. Total delusion, obviously. How clear can that be? But how many people say about the oil situation in general and drilling and burning coal, CO2 is great. The more the better. Without CO2, we all die. Wrap your lips around the exhaust pipe on your car and breathe deep and see how long you live. You can't just alter atmospheric chemistry this radically and expect anything to be able to adapt that fast. And now let's add the toxic climate engineering particulates and stop and think that before we incinerated millions of years of stored carbon and put it back into the atmosphere, the planet was thriving. And now that we're incinerating 100 million barrels of hydrocarbon a day, 26 million tons of coal a day, we're incinerating the forest, we're paving the planet, we're poisoning the oceans. How's the planet doing now? So if it was thriving before we altered atmospheric chemistry, in the case of CO2 by over 50%, and now everything's dying, does it make sense we should just do more? And somehow it's going to miraculously all work out? Doesn't make sense. It's all the above. And I'm no fan of Al Gore. I'm no fan of AOC. I'm no fan of any of the environmental groups. But we need to be reasonable and rational. And we should start any conversation about climate, anything with anyone from any perspective, with we must address climate engineering first and foremost. That's the only way we can have a legitimate discussion about the climate. We address that issue first. We build bridges instead of burning them. Learn to play chess effectively and efficiently. There is no legitimate discussion about climate, anything from any perspective, without first and foremost addressing climate engineering. Moving on from the UK Independent. Climate change is here. It's actually climate collapse, abrupt climate collapse. Experts warn environmental crisis is decades ahead of forecast. Again, exactly as I've stated so many times, it's not as bad as Al Gore has told us, it's exponentially worse. And why didn't they tell us before? Because they don't want the herd to panic until they're ready for that to happen. And keeping the herd pacified until the last possible moment is one of the objectives of climate engineering operations, thus the winter weather mayhem that's being carried out in the U.S. right now, because for so many Americans, no matter how hot it's been, if you engineer a super flash freeze surface cool down, suddenly they forget about all the heat for so many years and tell themselves it can't be happening. Look at all this cold, cold, cold. Sure, it's a chemical cold, but that's all they need is some sort of fortification of their desire to deny until the last possible moment. That road leads to omnicide. How else is the power structure preparing? Building their own private army. From newrepublic.com, in ICE's own words, quote, it's wartime in America, end quote. Ponder that. Then there's this from fastcompany.com. The price of gold and silver just hit another record. This time, the reason is different and worrisome. Turmoil abroad and politically charged events here at home appear to be pushing investors further toward the safe haven assets in 2026. Safe haven? Those shiny metal coins won't mean anything. Your next bite of food, next drink of water, and shelter will be all that matters far sooner than most dare to imagine. With all that in mind, ponder this timeless nugget from Mark Twain. It isn't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just isn't so. How many honorless cowards are parroting the official narrative and thus towing the line for the controllers? Honorless cowards that are desperately trying to ensure their membership in the criminal club that they feel will be most beneficial for their personal paradigm. They are pretend patriots, nothing more. Forgive me for again repeating this timeless and now more important than ever speech from JFK. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths and secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. JFK then stated, "There is a very grave danger that an unannounced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny. For from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary." JFK was assassinated shortly after this speech, and he is the last U.S. president to actually draw a line in the sand with the power structure. The rest, from then to now, is theater, is power structure puppets, regardless of their political stripe. For the record, if the human race remains on the current course, all the behind closed doors agendas and objectives of the money printing from thin air, criminally insane controllers will be moot points far sooner than almost any yet dare to imagine. Is that the silver lining to the coming collapse of everything, everywhere, all at once? Question: how many organizations pretend to be fighting everything from childhood disease to cancer to Alzheimer's, yet completely ignore the fact that all such maladies are being constantly fed with the endless contamination coming from every conceivable direction, including, of course, the weather, chemical, and biological warfare operations that are raging in our skies? Based on any reasonable assessment of human obliviousness to the tidal wave of extremely near-term planetary omnicide looming ever larger over our collective heads, are we in fact neck-deep in the zombie apocalypse right now? And about the power of now. For most people, presence is experienced either never at all or only accidentally and briefly on rare occasions, without being recognized for what it is. Most humans alternate not between consciousness and unconsciousness, but only between different levels of unconsciousness. In sleep, you constantly move between the phases of dreamless sleep and the dream state. And similarly, in wakefulness, most people only shift between ordinary unconsciousness and deep unconsciousness. It is a state not of acute pain, not of unhappiness, but rather of an almost continuous low-level unease and discontent, boredom, or nervousness. It's a kind of background static. Many don't even realize this because it's become so much a part of, quote, normal living. It's like not being aware of a background noise, the constant hum of an air conditioner, for example. And when it suddenly stops, there's a sense of relief. Many resort to using alcohol, drugs, sex, food, work, television, consumerism in an unconscious effort to remove the background undercurrent of unease. Engaging in, obsessing about, or clinging to such temporary distractions only provides short-lived symptom relief. That's all. The unease of ordinary unconsciousness due to ever-changing circumstances can and often does eventually manifest into the point of deep unconsciousness, a state of more acute suffering, more acute unhappiness. When things go wrong, when the ego is threatened, or there's a major challenge, threat, or a loss, Whether real or imagined, an intensified form of unconsciousness can and often does take hold. If or when we find ourselves in this form of a darker corner, it is then that we must summon the courage to stand and to clear the lens through which we see the world, and to keep marching forward, one step at a time, one day at a time. Never forget, our God-given will can't be taken by anyone, ever. No one can stop us from summoning the courage to refuse to go silently into the night. No one can stop us from struggling against the fading of the light. That is the narrow road. That is the place where unshakable solace exists. Fully exposing and halting the climate engineering assault is the great imperative of our time. Make your voice heard while it can still make a difference. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. As I stated as loudly and clearly as I could at the end of the Dimming documentary, any one of us could be the final pebble to trigger the landslide of awakening that would cause a shockwave around the world. Please make every single day count. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org.
Üdvözlöm Önöket! Józó Andrék és ma Tóth Szilárddal fogunk beszélgetni a mesterséges intelligenciáról, amivel belkezdünk, kérjük iratkozzanak fel csatornánkra. Köszönjük szépen!